So today we're going to cover how to rebuild a Vivi and Stardust head. So the first components we're going to need is our silica wick, our heating wire, a straightened out paper clip, a sharp pair of scissors, and I also recommend a toothpick or a super tiny screwdriver, something very pointy. So let's begin. First thing we have to do is remove our older coil assembly. To do that, remove the rubber seal that goes against the top cap of the Nova. Going to the bottom side by the threads, gently remove the center metal positive terminal with your fingernail and set that aside. Then remove the rubber insulator and set that aside. And finally, remove the coil assembly from the housing. That will expose our coil assembly, and you'll notice there is a white or off-white looking insulator separating the coil, or shielding the coil so that it doesn't press against the housing assembly. So there's our old coil. Obviously it's definitely time for a rebuild. So we can throw that away. Now reassembling is very much dependent upon the type of vapor you are and what you like. I'm a pretty heavy vapor. I like a hot warm vape, and I like to be able to run my Wraith at a lower voltage and still get a good hot powerful vape. So I prefer a double wick system. Gives me the best wicking material. You're welcome to use 1 wick, 2 wicks, 3 wicks. Try it different ways. See what works the best for you. As always with Vapoligy, there is no right or wrong. It's all about you. So to begin, I'm going to cut off about 4 inches of wick. And then I'm going to get my paper clip here. And as I said, I like a double wick, so I'm actually going to fold my wick over to a little bow tie. And run that parallel to my paper clip. Paper clip's going to operate basically like a brace. Now the wire is the most important to wrap your coil. A couple key factors. The wires cannot touch or overlap as you wrap it. And make sure you leave enough of a lead so that it can come down through the housing. So I recommend 3/4 inch to 1 inch of wire sticking down. So to begin, I'll have about 1 inch of wire poking down from below, and then I'm going to very firmly, but not super tight, just a good firm wrap, do 4 to 5 coils very close to each other but not overlapping. And I do mean very, very close. You need to keep this in a very tight area. So there's my 4 wraps. From there I'm going to run the excess down, once again leaving 3/4 inch to 1 inch of wire, and cut that off about parallel with the other one. So that creates my new coil assembly. So we can set the wire aside for now. Now we're ready to assemble the head. So first let's remove the paper clip out. There's no reason to have the brace. And the reason we wrap this wire so tight is because when we do remove that paper clip, it is going to allow breathing room for that wick. We want the wick to be able to slide back and forth through the coil. As you can see, it does shift through the coil. But we don't want it so loose it's just going to fly out, but we don't want it so tight it's going to pinch off the liquid from wicking through. So let's take our insulator and slide the wires back through it again, just like it came off. Keep in mind, this is the part that's going to insulate our coil assembly from the housing assembly. So it is crucial. Now once these wear out, it's usually time to just replace the unit, because odds are your bottom insulator is starting to melt out, your top one's starting to burn out, and it's just good to get new components to start with. So your wick should go all the way through, and as you can see there are holes on each side. Okay, so our 2 leads. We're going to very gently push down through the bottom of our housing assembly. Be careful, there is a ridge in there, so you've got to kind of wiggle it to get it clear of those ridges. And you want to very gently finesse it down so as not to pull or force anything. And your wick should go right down the side channels. And you can gently tug on the 2 wires just to help finesse it down into place. So there's our coil back into place. Now our 2 wires here are positive and negative. So our negative is going to ground out on the thread side, where the positive will go to the positive terminal side here. This rubber insulator is what keeps the two separated. So as you put this in, one wire goes in the center of the insulator, one goes on the outside of the insulator. And usually what I found is one wire tends to want to be on the outside and one kind of leans towards the center. So you can see this one here is a little more towards the outside edge. So we're going to put the other one in the center, like this. And then we're literally going to push this into place, forcing the ground wire to bend over and make contact with the housing assembly. That's your ground. Now the positive is also going to bend over on the insulator. So they should go both directions. Then simply push the positive terminal back in to the rubber insulator, pinching it against your coil leads. Now as you can see, you do have a lead sticking out both sides. At this point in time, cut them off just as close as you possibly can. Fingernail clippers work great for this as well. But we want them just as close as possible because we do not want them to fold over and touch either the positive or negative terminal and short the coil out. Let's try this again. Okay. Didn't actually cut that. There we go. Okay, so both are cut, but they do still stick out just a tiny bit. Now that is enough once this all gets screwed back together for it to jump. So what I recommend is using your fingernail, gently work it so it goes underneath the positive terminal for the positive wire. So you kind of sandwich it so there's nothing sticking out. And for the negative, do the same thing between the insulator and the housing. So essentially you should have no wire sticking out to make contact with anything else once it's all screwed together. So from there, I like to cut my loop so I have two open ends on both sides, and then slide my rubber insulator back into place. And there's our new head. Now it's always a good practice to go ahead and use a multimeter if you have one to test and see if it works. What I like to do, since I hate digging out my multimeter, is if you're very careful, first pull the rubber head off, or the rubber bushing, so you've got your coil exposed. You can actually gently screw this onto a 510 connection. Now if you don't feel comfortable with this or worry you're going to hurt something, don't do it. But it's a great way to test to see if it's going to heat up. Now hold it for a few seconds and yes, mine lights up, works fine. Now one thing I usually do is I'll also use a toothpick or something fine and I'll look very carefully down at my coil assembly. And I'll try to make sure that none are crossed over, and I'll keep a close eye as I'm assembling. If I see one that's folded over or not centered or it's making contact with the side, I'll go ahead and use something very fine to get in there and gently ease it away from the edges or to unfold them from being on top of each other. So from there, we should be good to reassemble this. Put it back onto our shaft for Vivi Nova. And this is where I'll actually remeasure my wicks, because obviously if they go over the seal, it's going to cause it to leak. So, just a quick little trim. Getting out all the smaller pieces from there. But I want them to go all the way to the bottom of the tank, but not overlap my rubber gasket. And then we're ready to go ahead and slide that back into our Nova. Cinch it down and fill. So, in just a few quick minutes, you've learned to rebuild your head. And keep in mind, you can change it and vary it however you desire, because no two people are the same and everyone has their preferences. So I hope this helps. If you have any questions, feel free to stop in and talk to Paul or myself or anybody there at Vapoligy, or give us a call. And happy to help you any way we can. Thanks and have a great day.